Ah, the little gobbo that could. Night Goblin Warboss, one of my favorite generic lord choices in the game in general. Secretly very strong, the very definition of a glass cannon though. A lot going for him, but a very small HP pool, low armor, low defense makes him very squishy. Today I'm up against a new patron, Le Emperor. You guys have seen replays on the channel before. Now joined as a patron, so wanted to say first, thanks for your generosity. This is one of the first practice sessions we had. And very fun game between Greenskins and Bretonnia. I've got the Night Goblin Warboss here, backed up by Bob to give him some immune to psychology. I think he might have immune to psychology anyway from the squig, actually. But anyway, that's just for general immune to psychology. We've got Spider Riders, Wolf Riders already charging into some peasant mobs in the opening phase here. 5 goblins for a front line, Swamp Things for some terror, 3 more biggins, including the Regiment of Renown Broken Tusk mob for anti-large armor piercing, counter cavalry action, King Lewin leading the way for Le Emperor. He's got some battle pilgrims up front, men-at-arms with polearms as well, the mobs eating the charge of the light cavalry. Also charges up Wah for me a little bit there. Got some pox arrows mixed with fire arrows, Damsel of Life, Knights of the Realm, and Knights Errant mixed. So we're going to get a nice engagement out on this flank. So, coming back to the Night Goblin Warboss, in general, his ability set's pretty competitive outside of having a tiny HP pool. Even on the squig, 3,000 HP for a mounted character is quite poor, especially for a melee-type character, but he's got Fermented Fungi, obviously you should be familiar with from Skarsnik as well. Very strong ability to debuff melee defense and also cause enrage. Lewin going to jump back in here. Take a little bit of skirmish fire. Meanwhile, this big cavalry engagement with the support of the goblins and the swamp things very much going in my favor. Knights of the Realm are going to have to pull away from there. But over on the opposite flank, the Broken Tusk mob are not necessarily getting the best of this engagement. I'm going to have to path some goblins into, again, support that infantry fight. Goblins generally trade very well against a lot of infantry types, especially with Wah active, which that now gets punched up, giving all of the Greenskins troops some extra hitting power. A little bit overexposed here with the Night Goblin Warboss. I have to be careful. Bob's in the general area. But right now, Lewin's a little bit busy trying to clean up my Boar Boy Biggins, which is a pretty smart play. You know, they're a danger to his cavalry, certainly. But Lewin also is at risk of taking some damage from them. Stand your ground is popped, though. He's up to 69 melee defense. Very nice. Unlikely to take too much damage. A lot of friendly fire, probably also from those Wolf Riders, Spider Riders. The Broken Tusk mob also going to get the Knights of the Realm there. Tangle them up, keep them from getting into the skirmish cavalry. Kind of protect the positioning here. For those of you guys who watch my Pistolier video, you should know skirmish cavalry have quite a bit of them here. And again, just from a positioning perspective, as the Night Goblin Warboss, I think he just used some of his fanatics. I missed that, but anyway, to clean up some of those mobs. Just wanted to point out the positioning of this skirmish cavalry here, sort of just keeping them in this back line. Again, not really shooting any specific targets, like, yeah, if I can focus Lewin if I want to, but really just keeping up the leadership damage and the poison on as many units as I can. We've got the Warboss back into a somewhat more protected position, but the Swamp Thing is getting now singled out by the ROR Battle Pilgrims. They definitely have flaming damage, which will give them a damage bonus here. Knights of the Realm, I mean halberds. It's a bad day in general for the Swamp Things. Bob also is in a pretty precarious position, but a lot of fire being poured in on both sides here, as both Peasant Archers and Wolf Riders, Spider Riders all shooting in. Lewin also cleaning up some of the cavalry, but here comes the abilities. We pop the Fermented Fungi and Tormentor Swords, so he can't move, hard snared, and also likely to go into Rampage once he takes some damage. The melee defense and melee attack both debuffed here, so, I mean, Lewin's stats are thankfully not in the pits for too long. I mean, both of these effects have very short up times, right? Which is why it's a little bit sometimes tricky to use, although it might seem very competitive on paper. Only 9 seconds for Tormentor Sword, and Fermented Fungi used to be double the amount, but now only 17 seconds, so you really have to take advantage and get as much burst damage as you can in that time frame, which we were able to. Broken Tusk mob definitely contributed quite a bit of damage. Night Goblin Warboss also got a few hits himself. Terror does kick in with the Knights of the Lion-Hearted, kind of cleaning up that engagement somewhat, although the Broken Tusk mob do come back. That Wah was just a hair too late to keep them from actually getting terror routed in the first place, but really I need to get Bob back up into this pocket to start providing immune to psychology, because we can see, yeah, with the squig, the Night Goblin Warboss is actually immune to psychology, which does give him, again, another kind of potential upside over some other Greenskins lords, although in comparison to somebody like Grom, he is infinitely more squishy. But now we get to see his own personal band of fanatics. Don't ask me where he stores them. Let's not think about that horrific fact. and just accept the fact that he carries around, some fanatics with him. So we've now used both of those to okay effect. Mostly it's just a tool to help him bail out of infantry fights, but now I'm in a dangerous position. I really don't want to take a fair fight in any way, shape, or form against Lewin. A Sword of Crone active especially puts him down to 29 melee defense, so I'm going to try and just screen with my Boar Cavalry there, get out of there. A little bit of a blast from the Night Goblin Shaman. Haven't really been highlighting him too much, but honestly been very much an unsung hero. Pretty much dealt with the Life Damsel through those Vindictive Glares, and has also been tossing out Sneaky Stabbins wherever he's able to, whenever it's appropriate. The Sneaky Stabbin for the AP and melee attack, great buff, very cheap buff to throw on a number of different units. At this point, we've pretty much cleaned up the cavalry, though. You can see the Broken Tusk Mob are still here, providing that Encourage aura as well. Bob holding tight the pocket of light cavalry here. It's mostly just light cavalry and goblins. Really only a handful of boar riders remain. Lewin's going to drop down again. We'll throw another Fungus Tormentor Sword combo on him. Try and just finish him off here. Bob actually in base contact. Doesn't look like he's... Oh, now he's fighting Lewin. I think a little sneaky stabbing on him also. Yep. Leadership gets low, but not low enough. Lewin actually is going to rout here, potentially. No, he does not rout, which is very important. Keeps his regeneration active. Vindictive Glare doesn't do much, but just any kind of hits I can get him on him at this point. Try and force army losses. As I'm a little bit worried. I mean, the balance power was pretty close up until just a second ago when I had a nice big mass rout here. But to be honest, it's all still mostly just like skirmish cavalry left, like a handful of tattered goblins. My leadership units are all very low, so if Lewin has too much time to just fly around and regenerate, that's going to be a huge problem for me in the late game. So I'm trying my best to just stay aggressive, try and push routing units off the field everywhere I can, try and keep rushing these archers and these halberds. Emperor's gonna dive down here, which, arguably he should maybe just keep flying around and just, like, protect these archers. Anything that overextends, like, hit these goblins right here, but he still does manage to rout some of those skirmish cavalry here. My characters are not quite fast enough to catch up to him, so risk averted for the most part, but he does just come straight back in, which there's something to be said for this. Trying to take out either of these characters, although going 2v1 here is pretty risky. If Lewin routs, that's basically game over, and I do still have Sneaky Stabbing in the back pocket, up to 89 melee attack, 458 weapon damage. I mean, the Night Gobbo gets canned, but Bob's able to punch back just hard enough. Bob also taking significant damage here, but Lewin now getting surrounded by Spider Riders. We've got one clutch Boar Biggin coming in as well, and that's going to force army losses. So honestly, very close battle. Pretty fun one. Nice to not see Grom versus the Fanchantress like it is almost every single time probably in this matchup, but I don't know. Maybe you see some different things from time to time here. The one thing with Fanchantress builds is it's kind of awkward to take Terror. The Green Knights, not great in general. Same for Hippogriff Knights. Like, you can definitely make them work. I have certainly in the past made them work, but it's tricky. And, your opponent can counter them. Lewin is probably the safest form of Terror, but again, that precludes you from bringing the Fanchantress. I guess you technically can still take Manticore summons, even though they're not as magic efficient, and you're also sacrificing some healing in order to cast those spells, and also sacrificing a Paladin hero slot. So it's just kind of awkward to take Terror, and you definitely, in my view, need Terror against the Greenskins. It's one of their main weaknesses. Even still, a very strong faction in general, but generally lack leadership and immune to psychology, although the Night Goblin Warboss does have that, and some nice technical abilities allow him to, get some good support value in. He also gets a little bit of damage. I mean, slightly more than Bob himself, which is pretty impressive. Night Goblin Shaman, again, mostly that value coming from just blasting the Damsel with Vindictive Glares. Gobbos all trade very well. I mean, super cost-effective in general, fighting any Bretonnian infantry, really. The Boar Biggins also anti-large AP. I mean, secretly, these are some of the best cavalry units in the game. I think a lot of people have kind of forgotten about them, but yeah, Greenskins are, if they had healing, they would probably be the best cavalry faction in the game, honestly. But they don't, so they're maybe like number 4, I would say. I don't know, I'd have to actually think about it, but Boars are certainly a very strong choice. Not to mention they have the best skirmish cavalry in the game. I think most people would agree. Greenskins skirmish cavalry, just due to the fact that it's so cheap. You have awesome access to poison. Wolf Riders having 60 unit models actually does matter in some contexts as well. Again, just the fact that it's so cheap and it trades well into so many different things. Like, all of these units really don't need to do a ton to pay for themselves, and they all end up paying for themselves. Swamp Things, not so much, but that's okay. For the Emperor, definitely a very valiant effort here. Peasant mobs all getting great value back, which is amazing. The men-at-arms with polearms also, again, don't need to do too much to pay for themselves. Very cost-effective in general. I like the pick of the Battle Pilgrims, too. In general, I mean, I think this build's pretty solid. Ultimately, the cavalry sort of fell a little bit short, which is unfortunately par for the course right now for Bretonnia. It's a little bit tricky, especially given that, you know, like, Boar Boys are just in many ways straight up better than Knights of the Realm, who are exactly the same cost, but that's, I guess, a discussion for another day. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Just to finish things up here with the Gobbo lad himself. In campaign, he does kind of get outshone by other lord types because he doesn't have a monstrous mount to go to in the late game. And, you know, especially with the Night Goblin Shaman now have access to the Spider Mount, which I was a huge proponent for, still a huge fan of, but it does mean that this guy in campaign kind of falls by the wayside. So hopefully someday, we keep our fingers crossed, we can get a true single-entity monster squig mount for this guy, not just, I mean, the Great Cave Squig is like a horse-sized quotations mount, right? But like a proper single-entity monster-sized squig, like what are they, Mangler squigs, I think they're called in the lore. You guys can let us know down in the comments below. Would be awesome. Would definitely make it more viable in the late game and campaign as well. But as it is, I mean, you've got a lot going for him here. Vanguard deployment, immune to psychology. You've got access to the boss's loons here, as we saw. Fermented fungi. Get back here is okay. The leadership buffs are generally pretty nice. Potion of Foolhardiness, if you want to take it, you can. Unbreakable will sometimes get him killed, though, if he doesn't run away. Sometimes that routing will save his life. But the 40% charge bonus is pretty legitimate as well, especially 31 seconds uptime. He's got 65 charge on the squig, so that's pretty solid. I mean, combine that with some uptime, you can definitely get a nasty little sneak attack with the melee defense debuff of fungi, the extra charge bonus, potion of foolhardiness, also lock him in place with the Tormentor Sword. I was kind of using those both at the same time, which is arguably not the most efficient. For a proper trap, what you'd probably want to do is pop the Tormentor Sword initially to get the first damage burst, or, I don't know, maybe you pop the fungi first to get the initial damage burst, but the problem is that the fungi, you need to have done damage for the Enrage to proc. Sometimes if you don't do enough damage, then they can still get away, so yeah, I guess that's my argument to maybe why you should use them at both at the same time, but let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Definitely a lot of fun. The best thing is, even fully kitted out here, he's only 1582, which is just ludicrously cheap. So, yeah, very low HP pool, but you can get really good value out of him, and sneaky good in certain scenarios. So let me know. Definitely not the most competitive choice, but a fun one if you're looking for something different. Playing Greenskins, you know, it can get a little boring just going Grom all the time, so there's that. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.